Hello, I'm Christine Schiavone, and our show is Spiritual Exploration. Tonight, we're going to talk about a visit that Louisa Mastro and I made to the Garibaldi Museum, where we got a lot of information, in some ways from Mr. Garibaldi and Meucci themselves, and we'll talk about that in a little while. But first, I just want to make mention, we're taping this show on Friday, June 13th, and it's also St. Anthony's feast day. So I just want to say happy St. Anthony's feast day to everybody, even though the show won't air until afterwards, but we always like to remember St. Anthony. He's a very, very special saint. In the meantime, I would like to introduce my guests. To my left, we have Joseph Sciame. That's the correct way of
It is correct.
Okay, pronouncing your name. And you are with the Garibaldi-Meucci Museum as their
Co-chairman.
co-chairman. And then to his left, we have Louisa Mastro.
Yes, and I'm the president of Distant Holistic Arts, holistic consulting company here on Staten Island.
Okay, great, wonderful. Anyway, so Louisa and I, among others, tonight we had actually our good friend Maria Elena DiMarzio, and she has been very instrumental in making the show, putting the show together, and I want to thank her as well as the rest of the crew for being here. We're going to talk about the museum because we went because of the fact that, first of all, the museum should be publicized to Staten Islanders because it is a part of Staten Island's history. And plus the fact that we have been told that the spirits of Mr. Garibaldi and Mr. Meucci frequent the place. And we did have some communication with them. And we had, it was a pretty good day, and they really are giving us the impression that they're very much into us doing this show and bringing about the fact that the museum is there and that they would like people to come, especially families, because, well, don't forget, as Italians, we're very family oriented, and they know that too. I'm sure that was the case way back when. Probably from the beginning of time, I imagine. So, anyway, so we are we were at the museum, and we found out from them that they're very pleased with doing this. So let's get into the meat of it. We are going to be showing a clip, and the clip would be inside the Garibaldi room. And that's where we're going to start our little story tonight, now visit to the Garibaldi-Meucci Museum. Here we are in Garibaldi's bedroom. It's a very, very antique-looking room with lots of old furniture in it. And what feelings are you getting, Louise?
Well, as I entered the room and I connected with Lou, I felt where Garibaldi was sleeping. This was his bedroom, is that right?
That is correct, yes. And this is the bed, and the kind of bed you can see goes back a long, long time. And on the bed are various things that were left here with his friend, Antonio Meucci.
Yes, and what I'm sensing, in the bedroom, it's very sacred space. And there is the presence of his first wife here, big, and I think she is a presence of a ghost, if you want to term it that way. But I think he was mourning her here, crying, crying, crying. If you listen psychically, you would hear the tears. And he's showing me he would pace from the bed. He would clean his guns here, so it's interesting how they have the guns laid out in his bedroom, because he's showing me he's very attached to his weaponry. He took it with him here to Staten Island. I'm sure those are his original guns, some of them too.
Yes,
and
they
he's
are.
very happy they're here. And crying and mourning his wife throughout this space. So this space has the remembrance of him in that mourning state.
Yes, this was his private space in the sense that it was the bedroom. And some very, very personal items like the hat, for example. There's only like 3 of those in existence.
Wow.
One is here, one is in the university, a museum in Rome, And the other one, I believe, is where his final remains are on the island of off Sardinia.
Wow, that's amazing.
So, some of those rifles are hunting rifles. Some of them are actually military rifles.
He's looking and he's showing me the first one here, and I'm not sure if the first one, the larger one,
That
is a hunting or military, but he's telling me
So that
that's
is
his
one here?
favorite.
Yes.
Of
That's
all
it.
the guns and all the places where his history is,
Mhm.
he's telling me that's the favorite, so I'm not sure if there's something
Mhm.
specific historically to that type of weapon
Mhm.
and Garibaldi, but it's a blessing to have that here, so he's showing us that connection.
Yes, yeah. And according to this, it is a musket that was used in war, okay? It was produced in France, and it was used during the military campaign of 1860, where.
So why would that be significant why would that be his favorite weapon?
Well, that's the one that he used when he landed in Sicily, the famous landing
Oh,
that
okay.
eventually united the southern part of Italy. So it
So
would,
he had that gun with him in
that was
Sicily.
the gun, yeah. So that would be probably why.
So that's very interesting, because I've
Mm.
never seen this,
Mhm.
these artifacts or this
Mhm.
space, but it's a very sacred space, and that is a very important artifact. So he wants us to make sure that it's noted, maybe hanging up on the wall or something. His hat, he says, not so funny. He had a good sense of humor too. I'm not sure. Did he have a good sense of humor?
Yes, he was a person who liked to sing
Okay.
and loved his moments, to actually. I understand he had a nice voice too.
Yes.
And sometimes between battles and so on, in order to pass what was very arduous times, they would bring an instrument, and play to release the tension of the soldiers. So that's very interesting.
It's very important. And he showed me the red shirt. That's significant in history. I think he encouraged everybody to wear the red shirts. There might be
Yes,
something.
yes. Now this particular red shirt was a gift to him after the wars, and he sent it to his friend Antonio. And this is a
Okay.
letter in Italian, and which begins "Mio caro Antonio." And it's a copy of the letter saying, "Please accept this as a gift of our friendship." So that's what that is. And this is also very personal to him, where he smoked a pipe,
Oh,
and that's where he used to put his pipe tobacco. It's just very interesting. And these photographs on the wall are of his. He was old here. This was a few years before he died, with the third wife, which is right there, and that's the daughter he had with her. Her name was Clelia in Italian, which is a form of Clara, and she lived until 1968.
wow.
So, and she was very, very old.
Beautiful. And he loved her. He's saying that of his first 5 children?
Yes.
5?
Yes, which with that lady, Anita.
Anita, I'm not sure.
She was from Uruguay. She was from Uruguay. When
She's saying he's saying different. She was different nationality.
Yes,
And
yes.
also different type of children. I'm not sure if our children were more military-oriented children.
Well, they were in the sense that some of them actually volunteered to fight in World War One.
Okay.
Again,
It's the same.
because they felt that France, had helped with Italian unification, and there
Mhm.
was a debt. He was very much into
Yes.
repaying, people who helped you.
Because he's saying in his mourning he was praying for his children. I'm not sure if his children came to visit him here at all, the children that he had with Anita. But he was missing his children, so
No.
that's why this room
Yeah.
is very sacred.
Right.
He's showing me I didn't have my wife, I didn't have my children, but I had my muskets.
Yes.
I had my friend,
Yes.
so thank you for pointing that out.
Yes.
And he did have pictures of his wife here or some type of drawings. I'm not sure if there's
Now,
anything
it's
original
interesting
to that time.
also for us to know that there's a painting here of George Washington,
Right.
and the reason for that, one says, well, why George Washington? Don't forget, Washington was in the previous century, the 1700s.
Wow.
Washington was a model for him as a liberator. And he always talked in very glowing terms about George Washington and loved America because we were the
Wow.
land of freedom. So that was placed here in his honor. We think that he would have liked that to be
He
there.
does, and also these books are significant, so I'm not sure if these books are from the original time of Garibaldi here. There's a pile of books.
I think they were found in the house and they were kept, as far as I know.
Yes.
That's why they put them here.
These are
Yeah.
significant because he said, he's showing me here, he read this one a lot.
Mhm.
So if I open it up and see, it might be in a different language, but he's showing us that this was his favorite book. And the title is significant. If we can find the title,
Oh, there
would
it
you
is.
be able to interpret that?
It's all about ancient Rome. Antiquità Romana, and so on. And before Italy was united, the Lombard area and the Veneto area. So it's interesting. Actually, it was printed in Naples in 1856.
Is that something he would have?
He would have
read
been
that.
aware.
He's
Yes, he
saying
would have
that
been aware
that
of
was
this.
my favorite book, and it
Yeah.
details also military plans. So if you were
Yes.
to read that, if a historian
Yes.
were to read that in its native
Yes,
language like
yes.
yourself,
It talks about the military campaigns at that period
Okay.
of time. So that's very
and
interesting.
he's telling me he was going to fight another campaign after he left here, left his book here, and used some of those the plans in that book. That's why that's a significant military document for his next campaigns. So you would probably see a synchronicity between the information in that book and his plan work for the other
For the
campaigns
other
that
campaigns.
came after America's visit. So that's what he wanted us to know. So in the creation of spirits who are well known, as they do walk among the guests who come here, a lot of times they have messages, and in this case there are a lot of historical messages, so it's great to be able to validate that and learn more through the history lens here as well. So that's what's coming in. They're here because they have history messages about the home, about the objects in the home, and about the sacredness of each of the rooms.
Okay, that was Louisa and I with the historian of the Garibaldi-Meucci Museum, Lou Leonini. And that was very interesting, wasn't it?
I think it's interesting, but I also think it points out that there were many medals and awards that Garibaldi had exhibited in that particular room and house. And unfortunately, the Italian-American community, when he died in 1882, attempted to abscond with many of them, but it was Meucci who protected them to the best of his ability and secured the house.
So where are they now?
Well, what's left there
Is there?
probably is there, but what is missing is the majority of the memorabilia.
They have no idea where it went?
No idea, because the Italian-American community was not united, nor could they have the funds, the resources for it. And what occurred was that the house went into some disrepair. And finally, by 1919, the Order of Sons of Italy in America, which was then a 14-year-old organization, a national organization, collected its funding and supported us, and they then prevailed and took ownership of the particular memorial. It was called a memorial.
And you are a past president
I am
of?
a national past president of the Order of Sons of Italy in America. I've been a member of the Sons of Italy for 46 years now.
Wow.
And I come from New Hyde Park, but I come back and forth to Staten Island all the time because I had been the chairman of the board of the museum when we reopened it in 1985. Up until that time, only an elderly couple lived there. And visitors would ring the bell and they would be admitted for a very brief visit because of this whole security issue.
Wow. Wow. So now the room that we were in, I understand that after Garibaldi's first wife passed away, he would sit, if you notice there was a window behind us, and he would sit in the rocking chair and just stare out that window, missing his wife.
Yes, I sensed the mourning process, and Lou was able to validate that historically, that it was the time that he was separated from his wife. His wife had died, and in that room, very sacred energy, and sacred energy because of the objects, as you shared also, the medals and the guns and his planning. And in between planning, he had to mourn the loss of his wife. So it was a very, very profound experience that I was receiving that guidance, and Lou was validating the history because you could sense the presence still there. And that's part of the history lesson that I think came through so well with the teachings in this space, because it may not be recorded as in his biography, but it's a very profound part of his own, psychological process of healing and then fighting the wars that came after his time here in Staten Island. It's pretty amazing.
What's also very ironic is that I have visited where he did die on the island of Caprera, which is quite a trip to make by boat. And on that island in Italy, in his bedroom where he eventually died, there is a huge window that he would look out to the sea.
Wow.
And there are many stories about it. And then, of course, he is entombed outside on the property.
Of where he passed.
Incredible tomb, mausoleum. that is right adjacent to the building.
So I guess he must go back and forth a lot too then, between
Oh,
Staten
yes.
Island and
Yeah. Yes, yes, yes.
But anyway, though, we know that this is the third location of the museum, but it wasn't brought far. It was like around the corner to 2 different locations around the corner, and then finally where it rests now,
Right.
which is on Tompkins Avenue?
Tompkins and Chestnut,
Tompkins and Chestnut, which is in the town of
the Rosebank area.
Rosebank. Right. Yeah, it's a beautiful place. It really is. Anyway, so then moving right along, we have a clip from the current location, right? And we're going to talk about the candle maker, because what was it? It was Meucci who was the candle maker, actually, right? He invented, besides the telephone, he actually invented the telephone. Alexander Graham Bell did not invent it. He did do some work with the prototype, but behind Meucci's back, and so consequently you might as well say he stole it. But he was an inventor, Meucci, and he, aside from the telephone that he actually invented, he invented the, what was the kind of candle he invented? It was some kind of a drip-free candle.
Drip-free.
Yeah. Anyway, though, and so he had a little candle factory on the property. And I think that's where we're going now, right?
The property overall is very beautiful and has a lot of psychic kinetic activity. That's good too, because when you have sunlight also, you have clearing. So in this area I sense a lot of clearing because there's sunlight and good energy that's moving about and can also communicate with us as we're moving through the museum. Now joining me is historian Lou from St. John University.
My name is Louis Leonini from St. John's University. I do Italian culture and Italian language there, and it's my pleasure to be here today with Louise discussing these items.
Number one is the Indians. Number two is the accuracy of the history. So it's really important that we have a historian like yourself validating the accuracy, because sometimes historical facts change over time. And why Spirit usually will bring a very eclectic group together is to really recognize what is true, what isn't, and have fun doing it. And bringing more people to the museum to come down and see these great items.
Sure.
So I'm getting that that person over there was really part of trying to rebuild this somehow. So I'm not sure if this was remodeled at a period of time. They're showing me
Well,
this is
very
partially remodeled.
recently they repainted it.
Okay.
They did. That was maybe when the house was repainted about maybe 5 or 6 years ago.
Okay.
They did this. It was very gray and kind of cracked in here and there. So they did touch it up a little bit, and they did paint. That's why it looks newer.
Yes. He's telling me it used to be more on the gray side.
Yes, it was.
Was that correct?
It was.
And
it was.
used to be, there used to be a platform here. So he's
Yes.
showing me there was a platform here. And this is a very sacred space.
Yeah, right in here.
And what Meucci is telling me is that as the candles would come out, he would pray. And this is why, I'm not sure historically what their faith was, if they were faithful men. But I know as they were living here on Staten Island, they're telling me that their faith was raised. And this is why they also bring spiritual people to discover these mysteries. So they're showing me, like, when the candles came out, it was a sacred time. Meucci's standing right here, if you get to see him or feel him. And he's telling me I was very prayerful, so I prayed over my candles so the saints would bless the candles and so they could sell the candles. Because they're showing me at a certain period of time they were concerned about money, so selling the candles. And
Yes,
making
yes,
money
it
on the
was
candles.
tough for them to make a living here. When Garibaldi came to be a guest of his, because he had left the revolution that was going on in Italy for 10 unification, and he had his wife had died, and he was mourning her.
Right.
So he came here, and Meucci kept telling him, "You don't have to do anything. You're my guest." But knowing that this man was struggling to make a living, he insisted
Yes.
on helping him. Now, the funny part of it is, Garibaldi later on in writing had said that the smell of the wax used to nauseate him,
Oh,
and
okay.
sometimes he would excuse himself to go and throw up, but he never ever let on because he felt that he needed to
And
help
he's actually
him.
laughing. He's saying,
Yes.
sometimes I would just throw up all over there.
Yeah.
We say he had a table here, and he would take the candles and put them on a table and then do another blessing ceremony. So if any psychic were to come out here, you would feel that the ground here is very clear compared to the ground over there. So the blessings extend themselves. So I'm not sure would there have been a table or tables around as he was
That I don't
doing
know
that.
because the photographs, you see parts of these things, but you don't see this activity.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't know, yes.
So there would be maybe historically accurate to he's suggesting like old pictures, like the pictures at the very beginning of their house or their time together. If you saw any tables out here, they would like those tables put back. So part of the reason they clamor is because, you know, hey, this is not historically accurate and we don't want to lie to the kids. So we want to have tables out here. So
That's
there's
very
a
interesting.
possibility they did picnics here, they had picnic tables.
Yeah, I do know
things
there
like
was a lot of activity here. Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of, getting together. They were very family-minded, and so that I'm sure, the Italian
Yes,
family
yes.
structure.
So they're really working on it. And then they show me the last thing is the top. And he's saying that this could have been taller. Is this possibility that this flume would have been taller?
No, yeah, I don't know. Maybe there was a larger chimney, you mean? On top
A
of
larger
it?
chimney.
It could have been.
And that's why he said people were getting, that's why they cut it, because people were getting hurt because it was too high.
Okay.
And maybe if he had to stoke the flames.
Yes.
And this got stuck.
And it could be. Very much so. So
they
they
had to
shortened it.
shorten it. But if you look at old pictures, you might see a different.
Being taller.
Being
Okay.
taller, having more tables and more platform around here.
Around
So
it.
that's one of the messages. And he's telling me I haunted this place until somebody got that out. We want the tables back. We want the families back.
Okay.
We want to even if they make pretend statues like little wax statues, or just to make sure they get the kids come and get the family environment of the Italian community.
Okay.
That's what they're suggesting.
Okay.
You know. And
So it was the paraffin candle that Meucci invented, which to this day we use the paraffin wax. As a matter of fact, some people have like these little hot tub type of thing. You put your hand in, and you come out, and your hand is full of the paraffin wax, and it's supposed to soften your skin and all that stuff. So I guess we have Mr. Meucci to thank for that too.
yes, very profoundly. He's still inspiring people today with inventions also. And everybody who walks into the museum can be inspired by what has already been left there.
Yeah, I'm
So-
sure. I'm sure. The museum is a good place. It's a nice place to visit.
Mm-hmm.
It is. Anyway, though, and then there's the
Geopathic stress. Geopathic stress is one reason why you may have spiritual activity. It is present in a lot of old historic places. I did send some at the Garibaldi. It's nothing that cannot be fixed or repaired energetically, but it could bring about the sensitivity of spirits. So I think, and that's only to bring about a message of history, like we talked about, of accuracy specifically in a place like the Garibaldi Museum. So there's a little bit where you see cracks in the sidewalk or cracks in a building. If you pray over that area, you ask, your angels to clear that, and you just be mindful that over time with weathering, you want to be able to repair that. That would be a spiritual message that would come through in an area where geopathic stress is present. And geopathic stress is just earth changes underneath the foundation or underneath the area of the grounds.
I think what's quite amazing is that Antonio Meucci was quite an inventor who was not recognized in his
I
time.
know, the poor man, what he went through.
I mean, he had to wait until a congressional resolution in 2002, 2003, in which former congressman here on Staten Island, Vito Fossella, was the main proponent of that, and was able to get that cleared through the Congress. But of course, the real situation was that he didn't have the money for the patent, as we know. He needed that
With
$10.
all those inventions, you think that he would have been able
Yes.
to accumulate that money.
Well, the story is that when they did have the money, he was sick at one point, and his beloved wife used the funds for other resources. They say that she was not exactly enamored with his life of inventions. And of course, one wonders how well they really got along.
Yeah.
But as Louisa and I were discussing earlier, we know that they are united once again on the property.
Oh,
and,
really?
And she has commented about
Yes.
that.
Yes,
that
very
sense of happiness, I think.
and very profound, and family, and his connection with Anita, his first wife and mother of five children. So it was a sentiment of his family loyalty also, as well as his national loyalty, and the importance of family or Italian community. As you'll see maybe later on, if you do go into the Garibaldi Museum, there are older pictures there with the tables out and them celebrating, probably on a Sunday, family dinners or picnics. And because of the presence of family and her influence over his relationship with his children, which is so important.
So I think what you really have is two men here, one who had his family, who was a hero of two worlds, and then you have the inventor, and the inventor whose wife didn't necessarily appreciate all that.
I wonder why. I mean, you know, I mean, when somebody's inventing, especially if they're successfully inventing things like the paraffin candle and all that stuff, you would think she'd support something like that, figuring that it would make the family some money.
Well, unfortunately, the patent money wasn't there, and
That's why she didn't want to put the money out.
exactly.
Yeah. Well,
I always think that it's a love story. It was a love story that took place in that house.
yeah.
I felt it from when I first entered it, because of the texture of the rooms, the way the rooms felt to me. And I, of course, did not sense what Louisa felt with spirits, but I still feel when I'm there for meetings and whatever that they are alive and they're well. And
Oh, I'm sure they are, and I'm sure that they keep up with what's going on there, especially that they, you know, I mean, the museum does tours, and people go there to learn about the tours and about what happened, the history of the place, and Garibaldi and Meucci, and also you're giving Italian language classes there, so anyone who wants to learn Italian can sign up.
Yes, and continuing that history of family and education in a very sacred space, because you can feel the vibration of sacredness in every room, whether you're psychic or not. That's the specialness of the museum itself. So it's
There's
a
a
very
nice
beautiful.
ambiance there, there is.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, we have another clip coming up. I did an interview with Lou Leonini, the historian, and we talked for a little while because he could not be here with us tonight. So let's see that clip. Hi, I'm here with Lou Leonini, and he's the historian for the Garibaldi-Meucci Museum. So, hi.
Hi.
We've done quite a bit here today at the museum, and I just wanted to know, first of all, how long have you been the historian for the museum?
Oh, it's 8 going on 9 years now.
Oh, then you should know just about everything about the place,
Almost, I think.
and the two people that the museum is named after.
Yes. And I've done many lectures about them and about their time, too. So I kind of had to know a lot more about them.
Oh, that's good. You know, well, you know, going back into the past, especially when it comes to like 100 years or better, is very intriguing. It really is. So I guess you've learned a lot about the men and their lives as well.
Yes.
So how do you feel when you're here? Do you ever feel a presence? Do you ever feel that they're watching what you're doing, or?
Not a presence per se, I'll be honest with you, but a feeling that a lot of things went on here. A lot of
Energies?
energies, or a lot of maybe joyful moments, sorrowful moments, and all. It's a feeling.
Which is like in any house.
Yeah.
In any home, there's
That
going to be happy
people
things
lived
and sad
here.
things.
You know, Meucci died in this house too. You know, so sometimes this is a big, large photograph of him downstairs. You know,
Yes.
and sometimes when I shut the lights and leave, I look at that and I say, my God, I wonder, you know, if he can see us or whatever. You know, it's just a feel. I have never seen anything personally, but I do get a feeling sometimes like that.
That there's an energy presence.
Yeah,
present.
I can't put it into words. I don't know why I feel that way, but I do.
And when you feel this energy, do you feel like it's an up energy or a...
I think so, and I get a feeling like in my helping to explain his story, his drama.
And they want that.
Yes, that maybe even if I don't feel anything personally, but I feel that that's something I should do and try to help to clarify how this man was, as you mentioned earlier, robbed. He was robbed.
Oh yeah, he was absolutely robbed, and when I really came to that realization, I mean, I heard it years ago. Oh, Meucci was, but you know, prove it. You know, Alexander Graham Bell. Everybody knows Alexander. But now that I've become close to the museum, I'm realizing Meucci really did get robbed. And as we were talking about before, they had a trial and everything, and he got really railroaded.
Right. There are so many things that I've had to study and discussed. For example, there's a judge that was in charge of the state court where this was first presented, his case. Well, this, you have to remember, this was an America that was very prejudiced against Italian Americans, or Italians in this case. The man did not speak English, so he needed a translator. They humiliated this man on the stand. It's horrible what went on. And basically behind the scenes, we have to look at Bell. Bell was a very wealthy man, and his father-in-law was very wealthy. I mean, there's talk that he even influenced the lab, you know, to basically say
That's
that
what
they
I
lost
hear.
his documents
Yes,
and
yes.
his actually instruments. And another thing that should be told also is that Wallace, Judge Wallace, they say at the time actually had already gotten shares in the Bell
Invention?
monopoly that was
Uh-huh.
beginning to form a company. Now, if that's true, and we have some indication that it is true, he should never, ever have been
stayed on the
presiding.
bench, yes.
He should have recused himself, but he did not. Not
Right.
only that, but he discounted evidence that should have been, you know, I mean, when they said there was no evidence, there was some of the actual things that Meucci used, and that due to the fact that he had been in an accident on the ferry, and his wife was desperate, she sold some stuff to a junk dealer that involved some of his actual instruments. The man came forward and said, "I have this." Judge Wallace stamped and said, "No, not to
So
be
Judge
considered."
Wallace was a crooked judge.
I think so.
That's
I
what
really,
it looks like.
I mean, a travesty of justice. So when I talk about this, I get a feeling that you're doing the right thing. You're trying to correct a wrong, or let people know about this wrong.
Absolutely,
You know?
because I am one person that likes to see justice. I like to see the right people get credit and the wrong people get pushed away.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay, that was really an interesting interview. Tell me, how did Garibaldi and Meucci know each other?
Well, this story really starts with Meucci leaving with his wife from the Tuscany region of Italy, Florence. They were Fiorentini, and they went to Havana. And in Havana, he started experimenting with all of his electronic type stuff, playing really with the stage when they were performing on the stage at the Teatro in Havana. And from there, then in 1850, in spring of 1850, he arrived in New York and determined to go to Staten Island. And it was shortly thereafter that Garibaldi arrived at the same time. They became friends. Of course, the name of Garibaldi was very well known to this Italian, despite the fact that he had been away from Italy for 15 years. But Giuseppe Garibaldi was becoming known throughout the world. So as a result, they lived together at that house in Staten Island, and then Garibaldi left, probably in, the years are always questionable, whether it was 52 or 53. Then he did come back to be with him until 1884, and then left permanently. But when they were together, they were noted to go hunting, fishing. They became very good friends, respected for one another.
Now, Meucci owned the house out, didn't
Well,
he?
he was allowed to live there.
Oh, and
because
so
he
it was
never had
Garibaldi's
money.
house.
No, it wasn't Garibaldi's house. It was
Either.
given to Garibaldi by some very well-to-do people who were involved with the brewery across the street.
Uh-huh.
So that's why when we talk about where was it moved from, and Louisa and I spoke about this earlier, the question is really, where exactly was this house? We know that it was rolled there. It somehow was rolled to its current spot. And that is where it has been for the most of the time that we know.
Did they move it because of the historical significance?
It might have been, and there was a period of time, and there are photographs that show it, where there was a wooden cupola put over it, because
Yeah.
it was a memorial. I think you've seen the photos
Yes,
of that.
I have.
And as a result, that was kept for quite a number of years until the termites started hitting the wood.
Uh-huh.
So that's why that particular Pantheon, that's what they called it, the Pantheon.
Yeah, I've
over
never
the
heard of that before,
Meucci
to tell you the
Memorial.
truth. Doing
Yes.
that, putting that over a house for like protection of some sort.
Well, it was the people at that time really revered the name of Giuseppe Garibaldi. And obviously to know that there was this inventor who struggled and who was his good friend, they wanted to preserve every bit of it.
Uh-huh.
And
I
in
see.
fact, the Tiro Asenio Riflemen's Club, they also wanted ownership of the house at one point. And supposedly they took care of it for a while, but then eventually, as I said, in 1919, that's when it became the property of the Sons of Italy.
I see. Okay, that's good that the Sons of Italy took it over. Now we have another clip coming up, and that is in the Meucci room, the first part of the Meucci room. If we
In discussing and looking around the house, as we were doing before, certain things came out, and one of them is outside the house is the furnace where they would heat up and make the candles. And we were standing outside even before we came in here, and I know Louise actually said that she had a feeling that the furnace that was outside actually had a longer chimney. And I had seen this picture before, but I didn't remember, and I said, yeah, and then she said, yes, and I think they shortened it, there was an issue. We come in, and we're looking at and we see the furnace with the larger, and there were things around it, which she indicated.
Yes, he talks about things around it, and
Yes.
A very prayerful area, and it's still very prayerful, and he also mentioned the facade that exists now is very different than it was, so Spirit was accurate. And one thing that Spirit does enjoy is as much authenticity as that you can discover in a historical place, is to keep that authenticity. It's very important that children come or adults come to learn the real history. So it's great that you have the pictures here looking at the real time that he would have been making those candles and enjoying the scenery.
I was asked before if Louise was talking to me about feelings in terms of when I come into the house, because very often I open the door and I'm here an hour or two before anybody gets here on Saturday and Sunday for the classes. And I'm not a psychic, but sometimes I feel very strongly, and it's just a feeling of mine, that a great injustice was done here, because this is the house where Meucci lived and died. And the man was robbed, and he died penniless. And in fact, one of the reasons why he was cremated was he did not have the money for a funeral. Okay, and his ashes are outside under that monument that was put by the Sons of Italy outside in the front of the museum. Even the wife, when this was done in the mid-50s, there's a monument to the wife outside. They had to go search, and she was in a potter's field out here, at the other end of the island. I forget the name of the place. And they had to go by number. There was no marker there and so on. And I was told by someone who looked through the records, the documents here, that they went through the documents, which is somewhere in this house, Bonnie that used to work here. And she said that she found that they had this, there was a little box, really, with what was left. Don't forget, we're talking a long time ago. She preceded him, in death. And so it was put there. That box was buried underneath that little monument to her. Estelle, her name was Estelle in English. So, but walking through here, I'm saying to myself, there's a feeling, I get a feeling, I don't know why, but that something very wrong, that was an injustice. And when I talk about him and I talk about Garibaldi too, I'm almost like motivated to help to correct or to give them their due. In other words, it's an inspiration to me to talk about them and to say what happened, because we need to know that. And I think, I don't know about, spirits if they're around and all, but I don't know why. I just feel that you're helping, and I say unfortunate, to be one of the ones helping to correct, and I'm sure you feel that way too.
That's exactly why Spirit has integrated this sort of psychic history or psychic archaeology, because there are a distortion of facts, and they are very prime at wanting to relive the truth. And that's an indicator of the character. They're telling me the character of Garibaldi was very righteous, very truthful, very authentic. Is that correct?
That is correct, and I'll tell you why it's correct too. I do know, studying his history, that when he left Meucci, he knew that Meucci was working on this invention. He was excited for him, and when he heard what was happening, he would write back and say, stay with it, don't lose heart. You will be recognized. Maybe not today, but you will be, and it happened in 2001.
Yes.
And I mean, that's to me what
And they're very proud. In the
Oh,
beginning,
late though, don't you think?
Yes, too late.
Now they have to go change the history books.
Yes, and it's beginning to happen. My wife
Yes.
works in New Jersey, and she's in this school, and she told me she was looking at a social studies book rather in the last few years. And now they're talking about the controversy. I mean, when I went to school, it was Alexander Graham
That
Bell.
was it.
That's
That's
it.
it.
And my dad used to say, no, it was Meucci. I thought, who was Meucci? I had no idea. He goes in Italy, everybody knows his name.
Wow.
So you see what's happening, and my father used to say in Italian, I don't know if I can, la verità viene sempre a galla. The truth always comes to the surface. Galla means floating.
Well, that's good news.
Yes.
He says it may take a long time.
Yes.
You
And
know.
that's the point of bringing spiritualists here, is they tell me that the truth about any historical area is so desperately needed, because as we move down history, we may find revisionists coming in, and
Yes,
we've
yeah,
seen that, or
yes.
you know, in the school systems at some point. And so, documenting the authenticity of what is here already is still very important. So that's what Meucci is coming in to share with us today. And he's the guy that you see or feel the energy. You're embraced by
When I come
Meucci
in.
when you come in. He wants to let you know that. And you're not doing anything wrong. The ghosts here are very positive. They're very sound in preserving the history here.
One thing I get sometimes when I do lectures that involve, people look at me and they say, but you're very passionate about this.
Why not?
I say, well, it's not just because it's interesting, but I really feel that it's an injustice, and that's wrong. And even though it's
And
late,
you're being put into a position where you can do something
yeah, and I
about
find myself, I think it's a very fortunate, because it's how many times do we want to be in a position to do something like that, and we're not.
Exactly.
Circumstances,
Exactly.
and all of a sudden you're there now, and people are looking to you, and
And here the three of us are.
and here we are,
Right.
doing the same kind of
Exactly.
thing, so we're fortunate.
Yeah, because they're saying now that the truth will always find itself
Yes.
home, meaning the truth will always be recognized, because Spirit is always helping us find the truth and then share the truth with the children, which is really their prime message, is to get that message out to the children, to come to the museum, to look at the artwork, to see the artifacts, to hear Lou teach and educate, to take the classes and really become one with the museum. That's their intention to educate and inform today.
Well, that room contained in in the glass enclosure, among other artifacts, the death mask of Meucci,
Yes.
which is actually his face.
And I think that's why his spirit is so present when you do walk into the room and you see the documents and you see the artifacts. And he's very easily to communicate in that room, at least for me, in that moment, and very profound because of his artifacts and his presence and his likeness in the space.
And he also carved a beautiful chair and an organ or piano that's also displayed in that room.
Yes, and we were sharing earlier the profoundness of the piano, because it was made by Meucci as a child, I do believe, and it brings about the sacredness of the woodwork that he was able to do, and the artisanship in his own character and talent. So you would see that directly when you look at it. And it's an old piano, so we were sharing that piano enthusiasts would love to come and see that too, because it may be one of the oldest pianos. We have to check that fact in this area or in the United States. And it really is an amazing artifact.
It
It's
is,
something
because the way it's carved, I mean, and a lot of work went into it.
Yes.
And as I explained earlier to Louisa, which I'm not sure I shared with you yet, is that was not always there. But after we reopened the museum in 1985 and opened up that exhibit that you see, someone called and said that they had that piano.
And they
And
donated it?
And yes, it was donated to the museum. At that time, the late May Menapace Seeley, she was the curator. She was a Staten Islander. She's now deceased, but she's the one that assembled a lot of the memorabilia we have.
Yeah.
And it was delivered, and we said, could it possibly be? And it was authenticated that this was his work, because you could see the same work on the chair. And as a result,
They did look
it
very
is-
similar.
It's a sacred piece, and I think what Louisa says, this even gives more of the spiritual feeling of his presence in that room, having had his death mask as well.
Right, no, his energy is definitely there.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yes.
His spirit, I'm sure, is there a lot.
Yes, and like I said, it's positive. It's not negative.
Oh yeah, I
yeah.
think that Garibaldi and Meucci want to see the museum continue on, and their legacy is there. You know,
Yes.
both of them, and it's a beautiful story how they were good friends in all those years.
I would say that it's not easy keeping a museum like that going.
I'm sure.
Because, as we know, state funds have dried up.
Yeah.
So we're depending on sometimes city money, but mostly the beneficence of people. And that's why you saw the path.
Well, you know, it's a worthwhile visit because there's a lot of history there. There's a lot of history for Italians and for Staten Islanders in general, because it's part of Italian history. It's also part of Staten Island history.
Yes, and the more you can bring publicity to the museum, the more people can come out and be aware of it, because I'm not sure if Staten Islanders are aware of the greatness of this sacred space for them to come out and visit. We have so many historical sites, and for them to come down and recognize the power of the Garibaldi Museum is really an amazing thing.
You do have events and things coming up. What is the phone number of the museum, if anybody can call?
Phone number is 718
718
442
442
1608.
1608.
And of course, the website, easy enough. It's www.Garibaldi-Meucci-Museum, one large word, .org.
Okay, so Garibaldi-Meucci-Museum.org.
Correct.
Okay, and then you can find out about different events that are coming up. I know something's coming up in October, which we'll talk about as soon as we see our last clip, which is also in the Meucci room. So let's finish up there.
Very loving. He favors everybody who comes to the museum. So he says those are my greatest inventions. The new children who come every day. So he leads them and he guides them. But in terms of history, he's telling me for the documents for the telephone. Is that correct? He's saying that history is actually a little bit correct on that matter. He did lend Alexander Graham Bell ideas, and so history saw those ideas. Alexander Graham Bell took off with it, and that's why history for so long gave Alexander Graham Bell credit for the telephone. So history is not inaccurate in there. What's left out is the inception of those ideas, and that's what we're recognizing as the truth. The inception of those ideas, completely now as I connect with Meucci's energy, was solely and completely his and God. So God allowed him through prayer to receive the inception of the ideas of the telephone that was badly needed. So they're showing me Meucci being very prayerful, praying for the gifts of Christ. So I'm not sure if he understood himself I'm not sure if he wanted to be a priest at some point in time, or was very devoted to spirit.
He was. Garibaldi was too. Garibaldi was anti-clerical because of the unification of Italy, where the church stood in the way. But he was very much a believer in God. A lot of his diary work and things he talked about was God. God will see. This is the right thing. They're wrong. But again, it was a clerical thing. It wasn't the belief.
Right. And then he said there's clerical errors in the documents. So this is to the court case. So what the court case was able to pick up were the clerical errors.
Yes.
And they had to go to court based on the errors in the documents. I'm not sure if that makes sense.
Yes.
And they were fighting over the errors for many, many years, and that's why he lost a lot of his income, because he had invested in the court case.
In the court case.
And he got sick over it.
Yes, and I think, I personally think that the way the trial went and the humiliation he endured as an Italian immigrant is instructive even to people coming to see what prejudice could do. I think it demoralized him, although he got letters from Italy from his friends to keep at it and all. And then the wife died. I think the man really despaired. I mean, it's a normal thing. And I felt sorry. I feel, knowing that story, you feel very sorry.
And he's saying that, thank you for that, because that was well said, because after that despair hit in, he got so depressed that he felt that if he invented one of the greatest of the world's inventions, he had so many more in his mind, who was going to take those inventions too? So he felt that everything was going to get robbed. I'm not sure if that's correct. So that's why he stopped working.
Yes.
And he went back to candle making, he said. He went back to playing music as we did.
Yes.
And he went back to loving history. So I'm not sure if he had affinity for history.
For history
and
also.
would read history
He was a
books.
very intelligent man. When you go back to his history in Florence, for example, with acoustical information, the interest of electricity, you know, that he discovered with to use on the telephone. Very much into the Academy of Music there in Florence. His stay in Cuba, for example, which we can talk about, and how he went down there to help with the bringing of Italian opera to Havana, and the wife making costumes, and so they were doing pretty nicely in Cuba. So you say, well, why did they come to Staten Island? Well, at that period of time, in the 1830s, early 1840s, Cuba was undergoing a revolution against Spain. They wanted freedom from Spain.
So they had to get out.
Yeah, it was dangerous. Havana, there were people shooting, and there was back and forth. So they left, and they came to quiet Staten Island. That's how they got here.
One last question about Meucci before we close. How in the spirit realm does he feel now about what has evolved since his death?
That's a great question. First of all, he loves all of us talking about his life. So from the history perspective, from the psychic perspective, from the media perspective that you all represent, he loves that. So he feels right now that they should sustain the museum in any way possible. So we ask people to come to the museum and spend time here, donate to the museum, because that's his #1 reason of calling us together. There's nothing haphazard in the world of spirit. So from spirit, he's saying, encourage the children to come. The children's programs that we talked about, the candle making classes, I'm not sure if it's okay to mention that, but you would invite so many more people, patrons, to the museum, and you will uncover documents from that moment on his candles, because he's showing me documents unfound that are diagrams of his favorite candles, and he left them here in the house to be discovered at this day and time. So there are more artifacts than you know. So he would like to see some of the trades that he was able, maybe even a woodworking class, develop here to really carry on his legacy.
Does it make him feel good that the truth is coming out now about his invention
Yes,
and what happened?
because the inception, he's talking about the inception of God. The idea where thought comes in from God's heart to your heart is a magical part of your life. So he was in development in that connection with spirit to receive one of the magical gifts of the world's inventions, and he's loving that he can get recognized for that at least,
At this point.
because that was his idea, it was his documents, and everything just kind of went haywire from there. He's saying that Alexander Graham Bell did it better with packaging, but he did it better with
He invented it, period.
the inner workings of the device.
And with that, I want to say
Unmatched, he
thank you to
says.
both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's been very nice.
Thank you. It was our pleasure.
Yes, thank you.
So there you have it. We talked about Garibaldi and Meucci and their lives and their connection with Staten Island, and they are definitely part of the history of Staten Island. And it would be nice if we as Staten Islanders would support the museum and visit there and see what life was like for them back when. And you do have some events coming up, right?
Yes, we have the ongoing events that will take place usually each month. What we now call it is the Festa Domenica, meaning a Sunday feast of some type, at which we have lectures and then perhaps some light refreshments at the museum. We know that in the months to come, the classes, of course, will resume. The lecture series by Professor Leonini and others. And then on November the 1st, we have our big gala brunch. And this has been so successful in the last 4 or 5 years here on Staten Island. It will be held at the Staten, November 1st, 10 o'clock in the morning.
Staten, nice place to
And
help.
then following that, there'll be the return to the museum. Last year, we had 150 people come back after the brunch.
Now this is November 1st?
Yes,
I gotta mark my calendar.
it's a Saturday morning,
Uh-huh.
and it's just wonderful.
Probably a nice day.
Yes, and what's going to be great is that we are getting close to the close of our campaign. We decided on the Brick Pathway a few years ago, and each year we've raised sufficient money that we're getting close to the $250,000 mark. Now, that means that we have to have 1,089 bricks that match the number of red shirts that went with Giuseppe Garibaldi across the Straits of Messina. So we now have about 780 bricks. We need another 300 or so more.
Okay,
So
let's
it's very easy.
see about getting some bricks.
The bricks are $100 each, $250 or $1,000. people are memorializing their families, their friends,
Oh,
themselves.
that's nice. That's nice. Well, we had a very interesting show, and it's time to say thank you and good night, and thank you definitely for coming. It was really interesting, and I really enjoyed doing the show. And
Yes, thank you.
Spirits
Christine.
alive.
that's
Yes,
right, spirits alive.
absolutely.
Good night, everyone.